Hey guys, Karen here, and this is the 360 podcast. We look at life from many angles to find truth and logical solutions. And this first podcast is something I've been thinking about for a while now, for a really long time. And I really didn't want my first episode to be about it, but it struck me today that, I'll just start and do it because it's a really important topic. And I want to get the thoughts out there. So, depression. If you look at the personality spectrum, and there's many examples of this, some people are just more prone to depression, and that's just the way it is. It's not necessarily a fault. And then there's others like myself that would be affected by it, or I should say affected by it at some point in their lives, but they're not crushed by it, and it's not this repeat occurrence in their daily lives or weekly or bi-weekly or whatever, um, however often it hits that person. All right. And then there's other people as well. There's the people who couldn't even be concerned about it in the sense that it, it's not even in their mirror. They just live their life and they just don't even really look in the direction of people who have this issue. And then there's the sort of last personality, which they sort of believe that you can just snap yourself out of it, like do something fun, do this, do that, right? And keep in mind, none of these personalities are to blame. They aren't to blame any more than the depressive personality. The person who is depressed is to be blamed for being depressed. So in my experience, like I was saying, I dealt with depression in the past, and I have many friends that deal with depression all the time. I minored in psych at university, and I've worked with mental health professionals on a few initiatives over the years. And that in no way qualifies me as an expert, but it's just for me to connect with you guys and let you know that I've been on multiple sides of the equation, both as a patient and on the, let's call it, the mentorship side of it. So there's this guy called Jeff Foster, and actually Jim Carrey is a big fan of this guy. And basically, from his approach, he likes to deconstruct the word, and he says that basically, um, deep pressed is basically deep rest, right? And what he means is that essentially that when we get depressed, it's our body and mind going in a state where it needs to have a deep rest away from the lives we've been living, the identity of the person that we've been putting forward in the world, right? So that's the Jeff Foster approach. And then there's the Eckhart Tolle approach, which is sort of blaming depression on not being present. So your thoughts are in the past because you're looking at all these bad things that happened to you in your life and even the bad things that recently happened to you. And then there's also thinking in the future because you're uncertain about the future and you're worried about where you fit in that future as well and your ability to cope with that future. And then there's the Jordan Peterson angle, which I'll just say that the way he looks at it is in a sense that if you're truly depressed, then it's very hard for anybody to really forge a path forward for you personally. You personally have to hang on to the ropes and the opportunities that you're given because you really don't know how much more of those that you'll be given. Right? And I'll speak a little bit more about that in a little while. Um, I have this friend as well. Um, he studies he's studying to be a clinical psychologist, so he does a lot of research on this stuff, and in his opinion as well is that depression is good. And the reason he says that is essentially that depression is essentially a signal that you need to change, right? Now we're not talking about depressive disorders or harsh clinical depression, but just the normal event of depression, because people forget depression is a normal thing. It's supposed to happen to you. Like if you don't get depressed at some point, you're not human, right? And there's different reasons why you can get depressed. Self-esteem is one thing. The ironic part about self-esteem is that One of the things that affects self-esteem is the idea that you failed or that you're not good enough. And the thing is, in order to prove to yourself and prove to the world that you're good enough, you have to act and do things. You have to learn and try. But you end up being crippled by the fear of failure and the fear of being seen as less than what you are. So, ironically, depression actually keeps you from building self esteem. Right? So, the thing is, you kind of have to acknowledge that and still go about it in a way that you have to do small things and build up your esteem in safe places and then risk the dangerous places. Because if you jump too far out, um, and you get hurt, and I mean, let's face it, life is tough. It's very likely you'll get hurt. You'll sort of revert back into that very depressed, low self-esteem area, and you'll think, well, why bother even trying, right? So then, when we look at loneliness as well, right? The irony about being lonely and being depressed is that um, there's I see it personally, and there's a thought I had today was that I see it sort of the Dunning-Kruger effect, and the Dunning-Kruger effect sort of states that if you're not good at something, it's somewhat proof that you lack the means to be good at that thing. You lack the traits, you lack the qualities, right? So if you feel lonely and you have no friends, right? It is very possible you lack the traits to attract friends, or at least the type of friends that would make you not feel lonely, right? And that's another problem I see too. I see a lot of people have a lot of friends and they say they're lonely, and there's a lot of these friends that are actually good friends, not just the fake friends or the shallow friends. And they still say, oh, I'm lonely, I'm lonely. And that's often because as well they're looking for these types of friends that are elusive to them. And we spoke about holding on to the ropes that are wrong because you don't, and friends are opportunities. Friends are also part of those opportunities. You have to look at it from the aspect of abundance mindset. Instead of looking at the friends you don't have, look at what you do have. For instance, there's some people who have like maybe one good friend, and the rest of their friends are family members. It's brothers, sisters, cousins, even aunts or uncles in some cases. That's a friend, right? Hold on to that. There's no shame in that. Sometimes a friend is just a neighbor that you rely on a few times a day. Start from there, build that relationship, use the confidence from that relationship to move forward, right? Yeah. Excuse me if you hear the neighbors. I'm not in a recording studio or anything like that. Um, so and then with loneliness, there one of the things that initiate that loneliness is that feeling of rejection, because we've all had friends initially at some point, right? And eventually, whatever happens in that situation, we feel rejected by them, or we feel rejected by that group of friends, right? And to be honest, it's rejection is something very hard to deal with because it hits you at your core. But there's something you have to realize when you get rejected by groups or even specific people. It's that it's very likely they didn't understand what they were buying. They didn't understand what you were offering. You know, you can't. Don't feel bad if your key doesn't fit into their lock. Your key isn't broken. Their lock may not even be broken, right? But if you try to force it, you're gonna hurt yourself, right? So with rejection, you just kind of have to accept that it didn't work. And of course, sometimes rejection is a sign that you need to improve. And just like depression is sometimes a sign that you need to improve. But there are many cases where there's nothing else you could have do. You just and it's actually very tricky because it's like one of those keys that it fits in the lock really well, and it's the lock is turning and you think it's going to unlock, and it's like, oh, this is such a great group of friends, or this is such a great friendship. And then it gets to that little point where it's just not going, you don't understand. It's like it fits, this key fits so well, and it's just this small little knob that's not clicking and not unlocking that gate to your um happy version of friendship. And you just have to accept it. Just You just go try a different key, try a different lock. It's kind of that simple, but at the time it feels really personal, it feels really horrible. And you just have to get over that. You have to feel those emotions and deal with it, but you have to move on from that eventually. All right. And then some other people get depressed as well. And I don't mean to run over a bunch of these, but I don't want it to be a super long podcast. Obviously, depression is a big topic. Um, but another reason is basically family. Many of us, our families make us depressed. And I was having this conversation with a lot of people in different mental health communities recently in regards to, let's just call it neurotic parents. More specifically, neurotic mothers, because it tends to show itself in neurotic mothers. And ironically, neurotic mothers, mothers who are high in that trait, they actually make good mothers because they they get worried about everything, and they're always cleaning, and they're always taking care of you, and they're always preparing and organizing. But often that, if you don't have a personality that accepts that well, it's actually very toxic for you, right? And what ends up happening is that you feel very, you know, you feel very picked at, very judged, and instead of their hands building you up with love, you feel like they're just taking little pieces of you and trying to mold you into what they think that you should be. So that's a trick. That's a trick relationship. Because on one level you should be thankful for the hands, but really it's smothering you, right? You know, there's very few things you can do about that. At least at our age, at least in this country. That's why some people move out relatively early, and that's a lot harder for some people than others. So it's not that easy. Other people create distance. They start going out every night. They start even hanging out with the wrong friends, as this kind of subconscious need to escape that home life, that person at home that keeps judging them and looking at them, right? And that's not exactly healthy either, because you often end up, you know, getting in the wrong groups of friends, and drinking and drugs, and you find these other escapes from someone who's supposed to be an escape. You're supposed to be able to get home. It's funny because a lot of movies have that cliche of the nagging wife, and a lot of men have that issue in this society as well, because they left their very overprotective mom, and then they end up with the nagging wife, and then the woman kind of wonder, why is the guy going to the bar so much, right? So again, this is not all women, and this is not every situation, but it's just an example, right? So another reason, is also the inability to cope, and this goes back as well to the point of not being certain that you can handle the future, and not being confident in yourself. And basically, with this, you should try to gain the traits and the training to cope, or do not try to cope. And that's weird because, a lot of professionals try to tell people, yeah, try. You don't know, you just try. And I think, or you just have a positive mindset. And I think that's actually very damaging. There's many articles about this, why blindly having a positive mindset when approaching certain problems is actually way more damaging, because again they eventually backfire in many cases, and it hurts your ego, it hurts your self-esteem, it hurts your confidence, right? And sometimes the best thing to do is to listen to your intuition. Now, you don't want to be overwhelmed by your emotions. You don't want to be overwhelmed and given to anxiety and fear. But sometimes your intuition is right. Your subconscious and intuition are very powerful computers. Right? So it's sometimes it's not telling you not to do it, but it's telling you to do it more carefully, or do it under the right conditions. Now, the conditions will never be perfect, but you just have to look at it in terms of probability. How do I make this a higher chance of succeeding? Right? I remember I was talking to a friend recently, and she was talking about, getting a job in this new place is so hard, right? And she was saying, it's all about connections, and everybody else has connections, or they speak a second language, or something like that. And I was telling you, like, let's assume compared to the other applicants that your chance of finding a new job in that city is 1%, right? That just means you have to apply to 100 places, right? Act not fine. You have low self esteem, or you don't think you're good enough, or maybe for some reason you are lower on the totem pole. Build yourself up, or acknowledge that you are that low and make up for it with effort, right? Don't walk into 100 different places just to get denied. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's no risk to sending out 100 emails. There's no risk. The worst thing they'll say is that we're not hiring right now, right? Or you don't fit the requirements. So that's just like a random example. So, and then there's biological reasons as well, biochemistry. I'll tell you something else too. There's a lot of people dealing with different addictions that they don't even know they're addicted to, and that's causing a lot of depression. And it throws up their especially sleep, throws off their circadian rhythm and all these different stuff. But for instance, there's a lot of alcoholics in the society that don't realize that when they don't have alcohol, um, because they keep conditioning themselves to need alcohol. When they don't have alcohol for a while, they feel depressed subconsciously, and that's why you keep hearing them. After a couple of weeks, oh, I haven't limed in a long time. I haven't hung on. I haven't blown off steam in a long time. Is no, what you're really saying is that you haven't drank in a while, and you've conditioned yourself to need drinking to let go of that steam, and you think you got depressed for some other reason, or that you're so stressed when really your body is just craving alcohol, right? Porn is one thing as well too. There's a conversation I've been having with many people recently. Is that do you know that withdrawal from porn makes you depressed as well? All right. So, and that's why a lot of people, again, they find that escape, and they think it's normal. It's not normal. And I'm not going to get on a rant about why porn is bad, but it's not it's not a natural way to deal with your problems, right? Because like 40, 50 years ago, people didn't deal with their problems in that way. And then there's the angle, and then there's the other sort of nihilistic version of depression, where you get to that state, or you use nihilism as an excuse to get to that state, and you start to say things like, "What's the point? Nothing matters," or "I'll just fail." And it's a really low point, and it's what Jordan Peterson calls that theoretical hell, where you're very low and you just don't think anything matters. And the truth is that that's far easier to accept than accepting that things do matter, that you do have an effect in the world, that the world needs you. It's much easier to say nothing matters and no one would care about me, because that takes all the responsibility from you, right? It's much, much harder to accept that responsibility and say, wow, wait, I do have an effect on people. I do have an effect in the world. I can't change things. I can't change myself. I can't help this person, right? Because the reason why that's scary, it means that you have to go out and try to do that, and you have to go out and try to succeed at that, right? And that's scary for a lot of people. It's scary for me personally. It's scary for everyone, right? Um, you know, you make a mistake and nothing matters, then there's no consequence. But you make a mistake when things do matter, you feel that failure, and we don't want to feel that failure. So something I've been noticing as well recently is that, especially or about men, right? Now, this will probably be the first time anybody has heard me speak about depression publicly in terms of my personal life or people around me, right? Because I tend to do it in very official settings or one-on-one settings, not so much public, right? For all the world to see and hear, is I guess the way you'd put it. And basically, I practice stoicism, and a lot of men passively practice stoicism as well, which is that they feel this pain and they don't talk about it, and it just builds, All right. And the stoic approach to oppression, um, sorry, the stoic approach to depression is potentially dangerous because they're not practicing real stoicism. They're practicing this uptight, masculine, unfeeling version, and that pain inevitably comes out in other places, and it comes out as rage, anger, resentment. They start hating women, or they start hating people of certain races or people from certain cultural groups, right? And I'm guilty of that too in the past as well, where I wouldn't call it misogyny, but you start you start blaming people for the way you feel inside, because you're not really dealing with how you feel inside. And it's the easiest thing for the ego to do is point outwards and say, this is the enemy, it's this race's fault, or it's this class's fault, it's the criminal's fault, or it's women's fault. Or in this country as well, we love to blame we love to blame the anybody of a higher. We like to blame the Syrians, we like to blame white people, we like to blame the Chinese, we like to blame anyone except ourselves. All right. So ironically, the stoic approach often ends up coming out very I don't know if unstoic is a word, but it comes out very unstoic basically. So all right. Um Now that we sort of define the problem and the approaches that people, at least the ways people look at the problem, we can now go about trying to solve the problem. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you I have the cure for depression, but the first thing to fixing any problem is awareness, right? You have to acknowledge the problem, you have to be able to recognize it in yourself and other people, and you have to have a decent idea about how to go about it, right? Um, and the thing is that there's many resources online and around where you can find out these things, but a lot of people in the press, they feel like, what's the point of trying, and that all these things haven't hasn't worked for them, right? And my success with depression and helping other people beat depression is that you have to treat it like a cold, like a disease. And the thing is, when we get the cold, right, we run out, we buy vitamin C, we buy Panadol, we buy Buckley's, we buy cough drops, we buy, ginger tea, and we eat garlic, and we cover up in blankets, and we do all these things to, to beat this, to beat it, right, to get it out of our system in a week or 2 weeks, or whatever the case is. And when people get depressed, however, they shut down, and they like, oh yeah, okay, I tried this one thing, and I tried that, and I went to the doctor and stuff like that. And the thing is, you have to treat it like that. You have to protect your first. You have to protect yourself against it like a cold. You have to stay away from certain things that get you super depressed, if possible, just like you would use hand sanitizer, or wash your hands, right? And there's many different things you could do, and the simplest things, I, I'd say, do, don't underestimate that depression is a state. And the way you break yourself out of a state is by changing your body. Your body is just a big bag of chemicals, and you need to do things that affect those chemicals. And I don't mean drugs, I don't mean coffee, I mean, exercise, right? That's fairly simple. And a lot of people, because you're depressed, you don't want to exercise, but ironically, exercise is very good for helping with depression, right? Meditation, for instance, as well. Meditation is a very powerful tool for dealing with, especially emotional aspect of depression, right? A big sign that um, a big sign that you may need to do something large as well is that when you get depressed relatively often, it may be related to your diet. I've seen people adopt a ketogenic diet, and it's just fixed all their depression and anxiety problems. And you could also write stuff down. Like, sometimes depression is just this like constipation of self, or it's like I said before, you're very tired of being that person. You're tired of pretending to be that person. I've been through that many times in my life, where it's not that necessarily that your feeling or your life is that bad. It's just that you're tired of pretending, right? And in such a case, you really have to pause and look at yourself and say, you know, who am I really? Who do I want to be? Why am I doing this? Why do I care about what this person thinks? Why do I want to go to this place? Right? Why do I feel this way when I come back from this place? Why do I feel this way at home? Right? And you really have to look into yourself. And one of the best suggestions as well is you treat yourself as if you were someone you love, you know. If someone you loved was as depressed as you are, how would you help them? How would you show them that, you know, the world needs them and that other people care, or that they at least they have the strength to build themselves back up? How would you show them to hold on to the opportunities, the ropes around them? Because when you get depressed, the ropes start to disappear, and a lot of people feel that because other people don't want to be dragged on with you, right? It's just like when somebody is drowning, right? The first thing is that other people say, you know, the lifeguards say you have to protect yourself first. You don't want to drown with that person. And that's why, as well, when you get really depressed, it feels lonely because other people don't want to deal with you. And you take that very personally as well. Like, oh, they don't really care. Some of them actually care. They don't want to be dragged down. And they're not wrong for that necessarily, because part of them knows that if they had half the feelings you have, that they wouldn't survive. So these are just something to think about, and I'll leave you on this last thing, which is actually kind of weird. Um, there's this scene in South Park, and it's on Facebook. You've probably seen the picture, and it's something my friend in the UK says as well, right? There's this picture of Butters, and he just got, I think he just got his heart broken, and he's crying, and there's like, and they asked him, it's okay, like, why are you crying? He said, well, because I'm really sad. And he said, well, but I'm actually happy. And they're like, okay, why are you happy? That doesn't make sense. You're crying, right? And he said, well, I'm happy because there is something in my life that could make me that sad, right? And that's weird to see. Uh, you have Life isn't just about these happy moments. You have to be able to enjoy and see the value of the bad moments too, right? One of my favorite quotes is, someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me a long time to realize this too was a gift, right? There's truth and beauty within even the dark moments people give us, right? It's an opportunity to make us stronger. It's an opportunity for us to learn, and sometimes it's just an opportunity to look at it and marvel and say, "Wow, I can't believe I was in that situation." All right, and there's beauty in that. Like it's like reading a sad story, or looking at a horror movie. Like if you saw that happen to somebody else, you take notes, you tell your friends about it, right? But because it happened to you, you take it super personally, and you shut down, and that's not the way to deal with it, right? So that's all I have to say on this at this specific time. And like I said, learn to find the beauty in the low moments and understand it's just a low moment. Low moments happen to billions of people every day. And I'm not reducing depression to a low moment. I'm just saying that, that's one of the triggers. That's one of the ways you get there in the first place. And the moment you look at it and you accept it for what it is the moment you can start working against it, and doing the small things that matter, and talking to the people that help pull you out of it. So, I mean, I guess this is the first podcast. In the future, it won't just be me monologuing and running through topics really quickly. I'll have some guests. And yeah, thanks for listening.